We're live. Howdy,
Woo.
howdy. Let's play some music. Welcome, people, to the most popular branding and marketing show in the world, starring Austin Frankie and
And
Chris
Steph
Hallif.
Hammerlink.
Yes, we should have some nicknames like Steph the Hammer, Link, Austin, Woo Punch, Frankie.
That's
You
right.
know,
That's right.
voila. But
In
there
the
we
red
have it.
corner.
In the red corner. How have you been, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Yep.
Nothing spectacular happening.
Nothing spectacular.
No, you didn't do any rebrands for well-known household names or something.
I did actually do a rebrand for Coca-Cola. That was a pretty big deal.
Ah,
So we're
I
we're we're switching from red to blue now. They're gonna be blue, and we decided to do a sans serif font.
mm,
So I think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be good.
yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, it's gonna be a lot more like meaningful for people. The blue, like thinking
Exactly.
about happiness,
Yep.
blue sky thinking. Uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And two, some people say that green represents environmental impact, but actually, studies have shown that blue is more correlated to nature. So
oh
that's
wow.
that's actually that's literally something someone told me once.
I mean, I'm not surprised at all. And today we're gonna have more of that bullshit, of course. Um,
As always.
it's not like as connected of a story as yours. Yours is usually very well researched. It has a proper narrative. As I'm in the middle of lots of brand stuff, I kind of threw together some stuff. So let's hope this makes sense. But
All right.
I don't know if you've ever seen this quote, Austin.
Mm-hmm.
Or
I have.
you probably heard it in like in startups, Silicon Valley, cool places. We
Yep.
don't need
All
we
the cool
don't
kids.
yeah
All
we
the cool
don't need
kids don't need marketing.
marketing is only for old people. I don't know, kind of old
Right.
people. Even Mr. Bezos said
I
something.
have seen
Well,
this.
yeah, he said it about advertising, which isn't marketing is a lot more than advertising, obviously. But that's part of what we'll be talking
What do
about
you
today.
what do you think this says about Amazon now that they are one of the biggest advertisers in the world? This quote did not age well.
It's like it slaps him back in the face, but he could care less probably. And also,
Oh no.
not even the fact that they're advertising, but also that like Amazon as a platform, like there's millions of people advertising on it to
Right.
get their products
Exactly.
sold. I don't
Exactly.
know.
Yeah.
It's it's painful, but anyhow, so there's also obviously the pet child, Apple. Does it need marketing? Of course not. I mean, it's their products are so great. Why would they? Except the fact that they're pretty much iconic. Advertising has been a big part of their initial growth. Anywho, this is the kind of shit we see when it comes to like product is more important. The product
Yep.
speak for itself. Build it and they'll come. That kind of stuff, and that
Hmm.
lands me on a very interesting article from Kirti Nair. I hope I pronounced that correctly, Kirti. But she wrote this article on Work about Tony Chocolonely, and I thought it was a super well written article, and it's a bit like also a bit debunking of what we do, and so I'm gonna steal a lot of stuff from this article, so all props go to Kiri, but shares this story about Tony Chocolonely. Do you know Tony Chocolonely?
I do not know Tony Chocolonely, but I have
Ah.
seen him come up, in articles on branding and marketing. But they do not exist here very prominently, at least.
Well, so Tony Chocolonely is like poster child of the whole purpose movement first and
Mm,
foremost. I mean, they have this well, actually it's a really cool brand in the sense that, let me see if I'll show you some stuff later. But basically, it's like slave-free chocolate. Looks very cool. The
Right.
founder Tun was like super well known to do this like almost activism kind of thing, and so a lot of people basically said like, hey. This brand here, Tony Chocolonely, is really like differentiated, and they don't need marketing, or at least they don't need paid advertising to grow. And Kirti's point is basically that they've used like every marketing lever to the maximum. So they should be celebrated as a marketing success story instead of being seen as a proof of marketing's irrelevance. And I think that's a very good point. We lost Austin, but I'm gonna keep going. He'll dial back in hopefully. Oh my god, this is so weird being alone in this place. I hope there's people watching. That's the there he is again. Let's just dial him back in here. Assign guest one, Mr. Austin. Okay, that's weird, people. Let's have him dial back in again. I'll go back to my screen at the same before I go back. So yeah, Tony Chocolonely. It's oh, sorry. Austin's calling again. He's back. Is he back? He's not back. Okay. So let's do it one more time. Hopefully he'll call back. But he said like the product itself is the brand's number one marketing tool. Again, sounds familiar, right? And let's see, Austin is ringing in again. This is wonderful, right, people? I don't see his camera or anything, so basically it's not working. No idea what's going on. Can we? For the live viewers, this is fun. I'm just gonna continue the story. So yeah, same story. The product's really the marketing. They're really unique at Tony's as they haven't spent any money on above the line media, basically meaning no TV spots, and they've got to number one market share in the Netherlands, and that's pretty impressive. It is indeed impressive, but the key interesting thing is where it comes to how this actually happened is that the brand itself, and a lot of these brands do that. We'll see that also with BrewDog and a lot of other brands, is that they basically say, yeah, well, it's because we had a lot of brand advocacy, word of mouth, the Choco fans, we had a really differentiated position, and so on. So, nothing unknown, but
Here we
aha,
go. You
there
know
you
what?
are.
I think I made the crucial error of using Safari.
Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
You know, Chrome has like done all these really stupid changes lately where like it logs me into different guest profiles constantly, and so sometimes to just make things easier I just switch to Safari. Yeah.
No worries. Well, anyways, I was continuing while you were away.
Good,
While you were
good,
away, but
very
so
good.
basically, Tony Chocolonely, they're saying the same thing. Our product is really what drives growth. It's because we're special, because we have this unique positioning, this unique story that people come to us. But in reality, I mean, Tony Chocolonely actually is a great example of like the playbook of building a big brand. They're
Yeah,
super distinctive. Their packaging is, I mean, it's lovely. It's super colorful. It's
yeah.
like this really distinctive thing. The typography is there. Also, very important. They're priced very expensive. Like they're as
Mm.
expensive as the other, I don't know, Montezuma and some other big brands. Like they're really in the expensive chocolate category. And so, price, placement, product, packaging, all of these things. I mean, this is literally the four P's of what what marketing is about. It's pushing those levers and that way building a brand. And so basically, they're not escaping it. Rather, they're performing it really well. And then obviously, yes, they might not be paying for TV advertising, but they're doing huge PR stunts like this one where they parked a huge tanker full of coca before Barry Callebaut, which is like the I think one of the biggest chocolate brands here in Europe
Mm.
for sure. And you know, it's kind of like this guerrilla style thing, but doing this costs a lot of money to do it. And
Yeah.
then, uh, you know, I don't know if you know this man,
I,
but he's
I do. Yeah. I hope he's
I'm
the next James Bond. I'm really pulling for it, but
oh his voice. I mean, okay, maybe not paid advertising, but Idris Elba, come on, like that's promotion for sure, right? I mean,
oh yeah, oh yeah.
uh,
Now I will say they made a crucial error because Idris Elba is is it Expedia? No, it's not Expedia. It's one of the I don't know, one of the online hotel booking platforms has used him very
ah,
heavily recently. So I would also say that yes, they paid a lot of money for him, and they also made a stupid mistake in
yep,
doing so.
exactly. If you want to George Clooney it, like own somebody that you
Right,
can George Clooney.
right.
But so, important point here. Whenever you see like people saying, "Yeah, they didn't do paid advertising," yes, obviously, but it's not because like you didn't pay for the distribution of the content that you didn't pay to create it in the first place, or that didn't take you a lot of time to do. Like Mr.
Yep.
Beast and his YouTube channel, like yeah, sure, the videos he made, he didn't pay to get them out there, but he probably spent like 10 years building an audience doing that. So it's not the same thing, but it is all part of marketing, and it should be like we should be celebrating it as marketing, not as the death of it.
Right,
One
right.
more example: our good friend, good friends Tesla. Obviously, yeah, this is a success story of the modern, like, build a differentiated brand. You don't need advertising, you don't need marketing. Well, they have showrooms. That's millions of dollars. That's physical availability. Well, they
Yep.
sent a car to the moon, costing around 450 million. I don't know how much. And then obviously they have the PR cannon that is Elon Musk, which not every company has. Like you can try to do that, but you have to have a very strong founder that is able to draw that sort of attention in. And I'm not even talking about the other stuff. But yeah, Tesla, obviously.
Yep.
I think in part the problem that happened here, and this is something we've seen, is like marketing often gets like like conflated with advertising, which is a problem. And advertising as such is often conflated with like paid advertising, and then you have even this other thing where it's like paid social advertising, and that's usually what a lot of marketers are seen as today, as like people doing
Yep.
paid social. But that's, you know, that's only a very small part of the mix. And this siloing obviously doesn't help. I mean, it kind of, on the one hand, like now that I'm also part of a, like, working at a B2B brand as like a brand manager, I see the need for specializations and for teams and for like like product marketing is really a
Hmm.
thing on its own, and there's content marketers and there's brand marketers and there's customer marketers. But the problem is kind of like with all these silos is that we forget that it's all this one
Yep.
thing, this one discipline, where we think about how we can move product and generate revenue and profits and so on. And so that's I think a real problem. And then yeah, you know, adding this one here, it's a very, like, I used to almost puke when I saw this, because it was like, I don't know if you had this, but in school it was like marketing and the four P's. It was so boring,
Right.
and like even today, a lot of people when they see this, they like, is this really what it's about? But if you think about it, and I think if you think about it in every moment of the day, it does help you to see new like opportunities and
Right.
perspectives. So I think it's very interesting favorite. But then in come the branding people to make things worse. Because it's not enough that like the product people and the engineer people are kind of shitting on like marketing and advertising as like, hey, maybe because you got a bad product, but we don't need this. Then come
Right.
the brand people saying, well, yeah, marketing is kind of dirty, it's short term, it's micro, it's tactical, it's the doing. I mean, I don't know what the hell this thing is. It has been doing, it has been doing the rounds on LinkedIn. I don't know if you saw this, but
Yeah. You showed
It's
it to me. I'm not
beautiful.
on LinkedIn, but you showed it to me.
It's beautiful, right? I mean, it's branding is why, branding is macro, branding builds loyalty, branding creates value, branding is the being. I mean, yeah.
The being,
Uh,
the
the
being.
being, it's beautiful, but this is adding to the confusion that is already happening. And then, oh, why not go even deeper? There's also a big difference between brand and branding.
Oh,
Ah,
I
so
see.
so so branding is visual, but brand is operational. Yeah, okay. So you see where the problem arises. Obviously,
Yes, yes.
just some nice frameworks to show. But I think we should quit the bullshit. It's probably some spelling errors in there, but I think we should really quit the bullshit. Branding is a part of marketing. Marketing covers a lot. It's like I don't even want to try to define it right here. Maybe the four pieces is as close as it's ever got to a good definition. And not
Right.
every marketer knows it all or even should know it all. But just being aware of like the powers, the levers of all of this stuff, I think will help us get beyond a lot of this bullshit that is out there. And yeah, props to Keerti for explaining it to the people, for dropping the mic and giving me
Yep.
an excuse to talk today.
Great. This is great. I would love to hear your thoughts. I think about this often. Um, I think about people as distinctive assets themselves. So like
Mm,
owners, or when I was on LinkedIn, there were like some bigger, like kind of more local or regional, maybe people that I saw often, and that I remembered who they were. I remember their name, but like it would be somebody with like a crazy looking hat, or it would be somebody with just like weird looking eyes. And so I often think about, like, Elon Musk with his weird accent. It's kind of some you know mix, a blend of a bunch of different things, probably his social awkwardness, his even his look is pretty, he kind of looks like a vampire a little bit. There's also something, I think to that, and I've been thinking about that a lot more lately, just like, people as distinctive assets, just literally they
mm.
look distinctive, right? They think that they're doing this thing, and they're like following all the rules that, like, a Marty Neumeyer or Kevin Roberts or whatever might tell them to do, but in reality they're finding success because they just look so damn different.
So that's maybe
Yeah,
something we should be doing more. I mean,
I know. I thought about
we
this.
look too
Yeah,
bland, man. I mean, and I think
we
it's funny.
do.
Like
You're right.
even Chris Do, he's like a very like specific. He has a very specific look
Yep,
persona,
he does.
and I mean, it works really well for him. He's really consistent with it. He's very
Yep,
recognizable, and I think that's really
yep,
like something, it's something we don't think about, but if we would like
yeah.
analyze probably 100 or 1,000, like even Gary V, his name
Oh yeah. Oh
Vaynerchuk,
yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
like distinctive, but also the way he
Yep.
talks, his whole
Yep.
like there's so much on the I wouldn't say it's non-verbal, but it is almost the purely visual aesthetic
Yeah.
of people,
Yep.
but also
Seth
the
Godin.
act. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's that.
Seth Godin's got the glasses and the bald head. I mean, really, there really is a lot. Like, all the guys that are saying you don't need marketing, essentially, the gurus
I
out there
agree.
saying you don't need marketing, have that are actually successful, all look really distinctive. Yeah,
It's a really
it's no
interesting
coincidence.
it's a really interesting observation. It could be cool to put together like a book of these things, but I mean, it's a I kind of get some of these things I talked about today. Like I work at a company where product is essential. It's engineers, designers working on this thing, and I kind of get why there's this pride in like we're building this beautiful thing and we really don't need to pay to get it to people. But I think it's like that there's two wrong things in there. One is like you don't always need to pay to use your marketing levers, like what we just
Right.
saw. Like if you the place you put your product, the price you put on it, the way you promote it, earn media, all of that stuff is part of
Hmm.
it. But at a certain
Hmm.
point, advertising is
Yeah.
perfectly normal to
Yeah.
grow. There, if there's a ROI, why the hell not? I mean, there's
Yeah.
like
I mean,
the
it's really the shortcut, right?
yeah,
It's the shortcut, right?
Yeah.
So you could become Seth Godin, but it took him 20 years to be a name that anyone recognized, right? You could
Yeah.
become Chris Do, same thing, 10, 15, whatever, however long it took him, right? It took him a long time to then get enough people to know who he was, so that then when he, if he started advertising, all of a sudden people are familiar with him, right? But that's the long way to go. Like, Gary Vee will say you should just be commenting on, a 1,000 different Twitter posts for 8 hours a day for 12 hours a day, whatever, for like 10 years, and then you'll be like, or you could just spend $100 on advertising and like do the same, like get the same traction that you would have with like 3 weeks of wasting your entire day commenting on Twitter posts. So there's advertising is the shortcut. It's kind of how I look at it. But there's also obviously everything else, and there's physical availability. Like, you're not going to get very far without that, no matter how much you're advertising. That obviously, with Tesla and some of these other examples, essentially physical availability was how they kind of got that traction. But then there's also, the PR stunts that Elon Musk, Elon Musk almost single-handedly, increases or decreases the share of crypto as a whole, right?
Yeah.
With a single tweet, he'll just say this one's dead, and then boom, entire, huge drops in shares. So, I think there's a lot to be said about that. Yeah.
100%. Well, I mean, I do see a question here in the chat. Let me check.
Oh, nice.
So
Very
Ali
nice.
Muhammad Baik, sorry if I didn't pronounce that correctly, asked, as an inspiring brand strategist, can I find clients or agents with aligning values as me? And then he goes on to say, by aligning values, I mean a shared understanding and conception of branding and marketing. I'm asking this because when I looked for work on the internet, it seemed like most people who were looking for brand strategists subscribe to the traditional understanding of branding and marketing, which you and I disagree with. Interesting. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah. I
You
think
you
that's a
you
very
you
real.
you're a practitioner with this
Yeah,
vision.
yeah,
How do you do it, man? What's your playbook?
right. Well, you got to have those conversations with people, and there are some people who are going to be completely closed off, but they're also, if you are kind of, showing yourself to believe a particular thing, and you're out there, then they're not going to want to have that conversation with you if they completely disagree. But I also do think, there is, sometimes like, when I answer questions like, differentiation for small brands, and questions like this, sometimes there is a negative reality that we have to accept, which
Mm,
is that most people are bought in. You're right. Most potential clients are bought in to the bullshit, right? And so they're going to be convinced by it. They're going to go towards strategists and marketers who are practitioners of it. And I think that's why a lot of people, when they hear of Byron Sharp and they hear of, Daniel Kahneman, and they hear of some of these other, Roy Sutherland, some of these other guys who are saying something and they actually believe it, I think some of them honestly just ignore it. Or
mm,
maybe it's consciously, maybe it's intentional, maybe it's unintentional or subconscious. But they're finding success taking a Seth Godin approach, because you have Seth Godin promoting it, right? That they can just point to him, right? You have a bunch of brand strategists who are getting published on HubSpot, just completely continuing to spout bullshit. And there are plenty of, you could become very wealthy as a brand strategist if you are a promoter of branding bullshit, essentially, right?
it's
Because
the best
at the end of the
market.
day, yeah, at the end of the day, many clients, you can manipulate metrics to show that what you're doing is working. You could just point to YouTube views or likes or shares or comments and say, see, this is working. In reality, it's getting a small, relatively small effect compared
Mm,
to what you could have if you followed a Byron Sharp approach. But it's so easy to just kind of keep going ahead once you hear some of this information, to just like say, all right, well, I'm just going to drop my ethics in this moment, and I'm just going to start continuing to say these things just because I know that I can make a lot of money from it. There's a reason why these concepts are so popular. It's because strategists have made tons of money from it in the past. But just because they're really successful as a strategist, just because Seth Godin and Gary Vee are really successful, doesn't mean that they actually found their success through the advice that they're giving. And I
mm,
think that's a really big disconnect. There's Gary Vee took over like a $3 million wine business and turned it into a 10 or $15 million wine business. He still started with a $3 million wine business, right? So there's a lot. He didn't just like start from scratch with
No.
no money and no business, just on commenting on people's Twitters, right? Or back in his day before Twitter,
No, there was this
emailing a bunch of
physical
strangers.
store. There was a reputation.
Right.
There was a
Exactly.
brand. There was distribution.
Exactly.
Yeah, one thing I would like to add to that is I think sometimes like what I try to do is a very pragmatic way of thinking where you look at this client and this specific problem they might be having, and then you just think about the solutions and you keep this like whatever kind of framework or criticism you have in the back of your mind, and you can lean on it when you need it, but it's
Yeah.
almost like solving the problem at hand and not getting like caught up too much in it. Sometimes
Yeah.
that might help you bridge this with clients, because often when you look at the reality of what you're trying to do, it's not always that relevant, like these philosophical
Mhm.
discussions. And if you can solve the problem for them with the tools
Right.
and the mindset you have, I think that that's great. But it's definitely like the things we're doing here, like having a podcast, writing your thoughts about it, can help you attract the clients that you want. But what I've seen, like even me, I've been outspoken about this stuff for years. I still get a lot of clients where we don't have per se this discussion about do you believe in differentiation or not, because it doesn't really matter. I
Right.
look
Right.
at their brand, try to understand the problems, give them the best
Yeah.
recommendations possible. But there are times when it does come up, and then it's interesting to at least have some thoughts about it, have a position about it, whether it's left or right. I don't think this is really left or right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyhow, I
Yeah.
hope that helped, Ali.
Yeah, sometimes it's the macro, sometimes it's the micro, right? So like
Yeah.
it could be, you're thinking as a strategist the kind of path that's going to be moving forward, and you're helping them to do that, even if they're believing in particular philosophies
Mm.
that you don't agree with. You can still help them build that brand. So a distinctive brand is going to be good regardless of your philosophy of differentiation,
Exactly. That's the
right?
thing.
So
And yeah,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you there, but I was also thinking like if you're working with smaller brands, like most of the time this stuff really won't
Yeah.
come up because you're working on
Right.
basics like, are we recognizable enough? Do we have the right message? Does the message correlate with how we see ourselves in the marketplace? I mean, there's so many things that on a basic level need to be done properly. Are we reaching enough people? How are we reaching that? Like this stuff
Yep.
is like basics 101. And whether that's like in the camp or of like Byron Sharp or the others, doesn't really matter. That's why I do like Mark Ritzen's, like he calls it bothism, where it's like you mix and mingle on what the problem needs, and that's, I think, sometimes a better approach. But being outspoken about it does help.
Yeah, I think as brand strategists, design is really what you want to lean into, distinctive design, because at the end of the day, you can always convince somebody that your brand should look different than your competitors' brands, right? That's a really easy case to make. It might
Mm.
not be as easy of a case to make to say differentiation is not going to be really effective long term. They could easily just say, well, look, what about this company and that company and this
Mm. Yeah.
company? And then you could just point right back and say, yeah, but how distinctive are they from their competitors?
Mm. Yeah.
Because that's always the case. All of these brands that the gurus or whoever will say, are masters of differentiation, they're also masters of distinctive design. So
Like
that's something you
Tony
can.
Chocolonely.
Tony Chocolonely, yeah, yeah, yeah. You can
The
always fall back on design.
There was this funny thing I wanted to see. Let me just quickly bring that up, actually, because it was relevant to what you're saying right now. Yeah. Yeah, no, the thing was like the CEO, I think, or the CMO of this company, he basically said like, we're not putting our message of like slave free and purpose on the outer wrapper of our
Mm,
packaging, nor are we putting it really in our comms. We want people to discover it once they buy the chocolate. And that's actually a really interesting point towards like, we just have this super cool, funky looking, distinctive thing,
yeah,
and then we tell them also about our purpose. And actually, actually think that's the best way to do it, and not put the
yeah,
purpose first,
oh
because
yeah,
that won't probably work in that way. So it's like, I think a lot of people actually innately understand this stuff, but when it comes to like the theory and the philosophy, we get lost in like, yeah, but they're so special because people really bought into their purpose. No, they bought into the colorful packaging, and then hey, it's nice to have to know that there's actually slave-free chocolate. I mean, chocolate. Why wouldn't you want to buy that for sure? But yeah, it's like the order of things sometimes gets a little bit confused.
Mhm. Yeah, and you can't assume that a customer is going to figure out your purpose if you're not advertising it directly. And again, it's a mistake to advertise it directly because you will definitely turn some people off. But also, it's a bad idea to assume that customers in general, consumers are going to perceive differentiation or brand purpose or values or anything like that. And so you have to have distinctive design. But if you happen to have differentiation and brand purpose on top of that, in some ways, depending on what type of kind of messaging your brand purpose is, like if you're Patagonia and you're in the outerwear industry, no one's going to disagree with your environmental cause,
Mm,
right? But if you're Nike and you're like promoting Black Lives Matter, right? When Nike's been, or not Nike, the NFL is what I'm thinking of. The NFL is promoting Black Lives Matter, and yet for decades they've been ignoring all of their black players who are getting
yeah,
CTE and concussions in their heads. Like, you don't have a case there. I'm sorry. Like, you can't suddenly be like, we care about the world when you haven't up until now, right? And also, it's not really relevant to the NFL, right?
yeah,
And so, if you're in a category where a brand purpose is very specific to that category, then it can be relevant. But at the same time, if you rely exclusively on that brand purpose and you ignore distinctive design, then it doesn't matter how great your purpose is. People aren't going to distinguish your brand from others, because that's not how our brains work when we buy brands. We're not thinking about, brand purpose as a first thing. We're thinking about, what's the brand I know? We're not even really thinking about it. We're just, you know, gravitating towards the brands that we know. If Patagonia didn't have their distinctive identity, then no one would be talking about their brand purpose.
exactly. Yeah, it reminds me
Yeah.
of like it's also, I mean, category entry points. The idea that when
Mhm.
people want to buy something from your category, they have a few reasons. Like, let's say I want a new smartphone, the old one's broken, or I want to take better pictures. These are all
Yeah.
entry points
Yeah.
for a category, and then making sure you're recognized when they enter that category is very important. And I was walking in this city street of Ghent, and I saw this huge like billboard for like a retailer of smartphones, and it said like something like buy sustainable or ecological friendly smartphones. I was like, that's not an entry
It's
point.
not.
Like, I mean,
It's also not a thing, I don't think.
it's, I mean, yeah, obviously, like if you think about it, like smartphones, like chips, like how it's produced,
Yeah.
not ever is gonna be sustainable. But even in without that, like that's not the first thing that people are gonna click when they buy, and
Right.
that's just knowing your customer and understanding why they're buying. I'm not saying that there isn't room for sustainability and all that stuff. Please go
Mhm.
do that as much as we can, but don't
Mhm.
put it as like the first thing,
Yeah.
the first message to get people to buy stuff. It's just not how it
Yeah.
works. But yeah.
Yeah. I think a good summary of this episode is that you can't build a brand through PR alone if you don't have distinctive design, if you don't have physical availability, and if you don't have a distinctive person behind it.
Hmm.
Honestly, I think Tesla has a distinctive design. That grill of their cars, is very distinctive. Most car brands don't have distinctive shapes or grills, right? They
Hmm.
just have their logo identifying them. So Tesla is extremely distinctive in the market from their look alone. But also, so is Elon Musk.
Yeah.
So if you got, and Elon Musk didn't just come out of nowhere, right? He started with PayPal. He built a name for himself. He
Exactly.
found success, right? So, like, of course he can start a company because he already has brand awareness for himself, and it makes it a lot easier. But at the same time, from what I understand, Tesla is not coming anywhere close to
Yeah.
Ford and Chevy and Toyota, right? So they're still in some ways a niche brand. They're a
No.
little
That.
bit broader than
Yeah.
most niche brands, but
Yeah, the funny thing is, once like Volkswagen and some other players started to advertise in this space,
yeah,
they
yeah,
basically overthrew
yeah,
Tesla in a matter of 2 years in the EV
yep,
space.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, right,
yeah,
right.
so. Yeah, I was curious. Like, I love this new design by what's her called again? Hyundai, and I'm
Hyundai, yeah.
thinking Hyundai.
Hyundai.
Yeah, that's yeah Hyundai. I'm really looking forward to see how this space will evolve, like with the whole new
Mhm.
EV, because all of a sudden, like the car aesthetic is like
Oh
totally
yeah.
like there's so much more options, and I'm hoping that a lot of brands will have like more peculiar designs, and hoping that will help them be more distinctive. For example, this is super futuristic stuff. Like I'm not sure they're all gonna look the same in 5 years, but it's interesting to see.
Well, it is also important to note that every one of these EV cars has very bright LED white, extremely white lights all over the front of them. So there's actually quite a lot
Ah,
of generic happening
yeah,
right now in that market, I think.
yeah, true, true. Well, we're copying each other. That's the way things
Yeah,
go.
right.
Anyhow, this was super interesting as always, and hope to see you in a few weeks.
Great. Sounds good.
Take care, man.
See you.
Some music. Bye bye, people. Thanks for watching. Thanks for the question, Ali. Hope that answered it. And as always, stay distinctive, stay
Show
differentiated.
the duck. Show the
Show the
duck.
duck. Yo. Finish. And broadcast.